Hello friends, welcome to DotVVM Minutes. In this short video series, I would like to share some nice features of DotVVM and some useful tips and tricks that you can use in your own projects. Today I will show you how to use Bootstrap 4 with DotVVM. Bootstrap 4 is a very popular library which allows you to create a nice looking website even without being a designer. You don't need advanced graphic skills to make nice looking websites. As you can see, I have this page, which is basically a copy of one of the Bootstrap 4 examples they have on their website. And basically it's a checkout form, so you have to enter your billing address, and here is a list of products which you have put in your cart, and you can also request a promo code. So DotVVM is an open source framework, and of course nothing can stop you from using Bootstrap with DotVVM, and you don't need to pay for anything because DotVVM is free and also Bootstrap is open source and free. So let's jump in the code. As you can see, I have a project on .NET Core. There is only one view with the form, and there is also a master page. So in the master page, I have some basic structure. As you can see, I'm referencing the Bootstrap CSS files, and also at the bottom of the page, there is a reference to jQuery and Bootstrap JavaScript. And here is the content placeholder. So this is the place where the content of the default .html page will be placed. And now, as you can see, here is the basic structure of the page. So I have a row, and there is a section with the shopping cart. I've created a custom control for the cart. And also there is the other column with the form. Yeah, so here is the cart, here is the form. The order of the elements is opposite because I'm using CSS classes which will reorder them and set them some priorities. But if I'm on the smaller screen, then I will see the cart first and the form later. So as you can see, it's just a bunch of CSS classes which I'm using in my markup. And also if I look in the cart, for example, I can combine .vvm controls with Bootstrap elements. So as you can see, here is the UL, unordered list with some CSS classes. And then I need to render each row for every product in the cart. And there is also a total, which is a little bit special. So under the repeater, I'm rendering the total. And the repeater control has some nice things, like the render wrapper tag property. You can set it to false. And then knockout will not render a div around the repeater, which is the default behavior, and it will just render the list items. There are some limitations. It doesn't work in all cases, but in most of them, it will work just fine. And also, if you want the repeater to render another element, not div, but for example, UL, you can also set wrapper tag name equals UL. And then the repeater would render UL. Of course, I would have to delete this one. And here is the list item with a bunch of other CSS classes and some bindings inside of that. So I'm rendering a collection of objects, and it will look just like this guy. Okay, so let's go to the form, because there are also some special things. As you can see, I have a row with 2 columns, and there are some labels, there are some text box controls. And as you can see, the text box needs to have a CSS class form control, so it would look bootstrapish, the rounded corners and things like that. And there are some validators here. This is copied from the official example of Bootstrap. So they have the validation done like this, that if you press a button, the validators will appear and as a red text below the fields. So that's one of the options we can use. And as you can see, the .vvm validation mechanisms are quite extensible. So I'm just setting the validator value to a property that will be validated. So this div will react to the validation state of this property. And I need to specify how the validation should work. And I'm doing that here. So I'm saying that inside this form, I'm validating only some portion of the view model, the order object, and also the validators will. This is the behavior for the validators. So when it's valid, the elements will be hidden, and when the property gets in the invalid state, this element will appear. So this just inherits the settings for the validators. So when this property is not valid, this element will appear. As you can see, there are also two checkboxes. They have nice Bootstrap styles, so it doesn't look like the default checkbox, and it will look the same in any browser. So let's look at this syntax. In Bootstrap, you need to wrap it inside a div element, then you can use the checkbox, and you can use the label. And because it has some special CSS classes, you have to use the label which is separated from the checkbox control. You cannot just set text to that because it wouldn't get the correct CSS class, but still you can use the checkbox and data binding for the check property and things like that. If you want to build a larger application with Bootstrap, it can get a little bit boring because sometimes the Bootstrap syntax is quite long, and there is a lot of CSS classes, and you have to remember the names. The IntelliSense will give you a list of all classes which are available in Bootstrap, but of course only some combination works. If you are in a ModalDialog, you need to use the model header and model footer, model body CSS classes, but who can remember all those, the order and the hierarchy of these elements with these classes? So it may get annoying and difficult, and you will be copy pasting a bunch of large snippets of code from the Bootstrap documentation. That's why we have created Bootstrap for DotVVM. It's a set of DotVVM controls which support data binding and IntelliSense, and it's commercial, so you need to pay something, but it's not very expensive. And it will make your life much easier because we have wrappers for every widget and every piece of design which is available in Bootstrap. So there are controls like a grid view, which has already the Bootstrap styles of grid view. There is accordion, for example, ModalDialog, DateTimePicker, and a lot of other useful controls. And the best thing is that you have full IntelliSense on them, so you don't need to remember the order and the hierarchy of those nested diffs. Because if you look at the syntax you need to use for ModalDialog, it's very difficult to remember. But if you just use a ModalDialog control, and the IntelliSense will tell you what are the names of the properties and the templates inside the ModalDialog. So it's very easy. And we support both Bootstrap 3 and Bootstrap 4. So if you buy the license, you will get both libraries, so you can choose the version you want to use. If you have some Bootstrap free code, it may be easier to stay with that than upgrading it, because there are some things like the glyph icons which were removed from Bootstrap, so they are in the version 3 but not in version 4. We will be adding them separately in the .vvm contrib package for free. Okay, so how to use Bootstrap for .vvm package? You can go to the website and buy the license or request a trial version, so you will get it for 30 days for free. The first thing you need to do is to make sure that you have registered the .vvm private NuGet feed in your configuration of NuGet. It's added automatically when you install .vvm for Visual Studio and log in. But if you haven't done this, you may need to run this code, NuGet sources add, and add the .vvm feed, so you would get access to the commercial products of .vvm. And if you buy a license, you will see the library will show up in the NuGet feed. Yeah, so that's the first thing. You can make sure that in the Visual Studio, if you go to the options and say NuGet Package Manager, you can look at package sources and make sure that the source is there. Now I have selected the .vvm feed from the package source in the package source combo box, and I can see the .vvm business pack and .vvm controls Bootstrap. If you want to use Bootstrap 3, the package is this one, DotVVM controls Bootstrap, and we have also DotVVM controls Bootstrap 4, which is currently in the preview, but we will release the first RTM version very soon. So, but now make sure that you have include pre-release checked. Otherwise, you wouldn't see this package at all because there is no production version right now at the moment. Okay, so I have already installed it in the project. So that's it. And as you can see, it's there. So I have it here. And the first thing you need to do is to register this package in the configuration. So you need to open .vvm startup and say config.add bootstrap for configuration. And there are two options. If you don't have Bootstrap already in the project, you can just pass no parameters in this function, and the magic will happen automatically for you. But if you are already including Bootstrap 4 files in and scripts and styles in the page, you can just say that the controls shouldn't include these resources for you because they are already in the page. So that's the first thing you need to register. And then you can start using the controls. Okay, so the body of the page gets some background color light CSS class, but I really don't remember how the class, what's the class name. If I look in the source, I will see that it's bg-light. Yeah, but I don't remember that, and it would be difficult for me to find it in the in the list of all CSS classes because there is quite a lot of them. Yeah, so we have a thing which is called decorators, and every element has some decorators. So you can see here is color decorator for the text and for the background and other things. So I can see color decorator background color equals, and I have IntelliSense for that. So here are all the options I can use on this place. I have a container control, which can be useful because also I wouldn't have to write div class equals container, and I don't remember how to make it using 100% of the page. So also of the page of the screen width, of the window width, of the window horizontal space. So here I also have some options which type of the container I want. I have a nice controls for the grid layout, for the grid system. So we have the BS row and BS column controls. Yeah, so you can use the rows and columns, and there is a property called size for each screen size. So we have the number of columns in the medium screen size, and there is also flex decorator because I can reorder elements in a row for making the website responsive. So on the small screens, the cart will be at the beginning, and then there will be the order form, the billing address, and things like that. But and this is a universal CSS class which can be used anywhere. So there is also a decorator for that. We have flex decorator, order, medium size. So it's the position is 2, and here we have the position 1. Yeah, so that's the controls for working with the grid system, and you don't need to remember if it's call -offset -md or call -md -offset and things like that. You can also rely on IntelliSense here. Another quite useful things is the form groups. Also, the syntax for making the form group is quite long and complicated. Let's compare. I need to create a label with the text, then to create the control, and then some validation, things like that. And also there are some CSS classes. The control has to have the form control class and things like that. So we have also nice controls called the form group, which already renders a label for me, and I can place text box. And we have a Bootstrap version of the text box, which will already have the CSS class form control, so you don't need to remember it, and you just use Bootstrap text box, and it will look it will use the Bootstrap visual styles for form controls. Yeah. So the validation is the same, but if I do the validation differently, and if I could get rid of this, I can delete it for now. I have also a little bit shorter syntax. I can say BS text box form group, which is a special form group which has the text box inside. So I can just say label text, is called first name, and the text binding is first name. And that's it. That's the text box form group, which is a form group with the text box inside, and it will do this magic for me. So it's on one line, it's very simple to use, and you will love it. What's also very nice is this, this is called input group. Basically, it's a text box with some content on the left or on the right. It can be also on the right. And also it's done by some crazy CSS classes. So it's an input group. There is input group prepend, input group text inside, and here is the @ sign. And now we have the control here. Yeah, so with Bootstrap for .vvm, this is also a little bit easier because there is the input group control. It has the left template and right template, so it's very easy, very discoverable from the IntelliSense, which will help you with this. And in the left template, you will also see what options you have here. So this is the list of controls you can use inside the template of the input group. Yeah, so you can just select which control you want. I'm using input group literal, which can display text. And then you can use some controls in the input group. It can be a combo box, it can be text box, but also there are no other options. If you would place anything else in the input group, it wouldn't look really nice. And this is also handled by the IntelliSense. So the IntelliSense will show you what are the options and what you can use inside of the input group. Yeah, so you don't even need to read the documentation because the IntelliSense will guide you and show you what options are actually there. And if you find some feature which is missing in input group, you can always drop down to the classic HTML and CSS classes. So there are also no limitations. If there is some special scenario which may be not officially supported but may be working, then you can just use pure HTML for doing the job. If you have, for example, if you have some special things in the label, if it's not just a text, there is some div with text muted CSS class, you can use label template of the form group, so you can still place anything you need to in the label. Okay, again we have BS text box, which will add the CSS class, and let's go down to the combo box. So also you can see we have BS combo box, which has the same API as normal combo box, but it will have the Bootstrap look and feel. As you can see in the previous example, you need to have the div element and classic checkbox and the label with correct CSS classes, otherwise the checkbox wouldn't look really nice. With Bootstrap for .vvm, you can just use BS checkbox and you can say form control style equals Bootstrap custom. There's also a selection, so we can say default style or the Bootstrap custom, and it will render the all ceremony with the divs and labels and correct CSS classes. It will render everything you will need. So it's just one control which will do all the magic. Also, we have a card here. We have a list group because this is a list group element in a list group widget from Bootstrap. So there is a list group and we have a data binding here. So it looks really like a repeater. There is data source, which I will place the objects inside. And here in the template, I will say how each item will look like. And it will render these borders and the backgrounds and all the things automatically for me, so I don't need to remember the CSS classes. Also, if I return back in the previous example, you need to know that this is a list group, this is a list group item, justify content between, and blah blah blah. Yeah, so it's also very difficult and to remember and to do a correct combination. Here it's a little bit simpler than that. Okay, and last but not least is the model dialog. When I click this button, I can display a model dialog and place some content here, place some buttons here, and things like that. So it's very easy to do because I have the ModalDialog control, and also there is a property which is bound to a Boolean property in the view model. So basically, you are just switching the isConfirmVisible property between true and false, and this will tell Bootstrap for DotVVM to show or hide the ModalDialog. So if I need to display the dialog, I can use a static command and just say root isConfirmVisible equals true. This will be done on the client side. It's translated to JavaScript, so no communication with the server. Just if you click the button, I'm switching this property to true, and the ModalDialog will appear. And here is the header template, content template, footer template, easy. Also no CSS classes to remember. And I have two buttons. This one is primary, this is light, also IntelliSense for the types of the buttons. And here I'm calling the original command, the checkout, and here I'm just hiding the dialog. And also it will respond to the escape key. So if I press escape, it's all gone. Yeah, so this is very easy, and you really don't need to go to the Bootstrap documentation and see how to write a ModalDialog. You can just use the control, which is here. We have plenty of other controls which are very interesting. We have, for example, DateTimePicker. So download the Bootstrap for DotVVM and try it today. Okay, so once again, Bootstrap for DotVVM is a commercial set of controls which contains a lot of prepared and ready-made controls for DotVVM. They all support data binding and IntelliSense, and they will help you with using Bootstrap efficiently without looking into Bootstrap documentation. You can request a trial for 30 days, so you can feel free to try it, feel free to use the controls and see if it helps your scenarios. And you can also purchase the package for $49. The license is perpetual, which means that it doesn't expire anytime. It's permanent. You can use it in any number of projects in your company. And it also includes 12 months of updates. So if we add new features or fix some bugs, you will get the new versions on the NuGet feed. And after the license expires, you can just buy another 12 months or just keep using the old version. Okay, so that's all for the first episode of DotVVM Minutes, and see you next time.